Good evening, friends. Once again, we are meeting after a quite long time. It's purely simple because I wasn't feeling well. Now I'm okay. So let's continue with our learning process. Today, we are going to talk about the fundamental concepts of managerial economics, that is, demand, around which the whole theory of economics revolves. If you remember what is economics or what is economic activity, economic activity is simply put production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. Of course, things are not manufactured for the sake of manufacturing. People don't distribute for the sake of distribution, and people don't consume for the sake of consumption. Everything, all the economic activity revolves around three aspirations, that's needs, wants, and desires. What you need is mass produced. What you want is selectively produced, and what you desire is produced on demand. And accordingly, it is distributed and it is consumed. What you need is consumed on a mass scale. What you want is consumed on the required levels. What you desire is consumed as and when it is felt. Right? Simply put, what we are trying to understand is this whole production, consumption, and distribution is backed by demand. We keep on hearing this word quite often in our lives, and we say that what is demand? Simply we say that it's shortage of supply, right? Shortage of supply is a situation, it's not demand. When demand is not a situation, then what is demand? Demand is a concept which drives economic activity. Demand is a theory which pushes economic activity, which pulls economic activity, that is production, distribution, consumption of goods and services. So how do you define demand? Do you say that I need this is what you call it as demand? I want this is what you call it demand. That is half the story. Then what is demand? It's an effective desire. A very important word. It's an effective desire. Effective desire. Like, for example, a human being has a lot of desires, but they are effective. Now, why we are using the word effective here is because that desire, which is backed by willingness to buy. Two things are essential for a desire to be effective. Effective means, how do you say that this thing is effective? Effective means anything that reaches the preset, predetermined, prefixed goals, objectives, levels with minimum of efforts. That is what we call it as effectiveness or being effective. So, a desire which is effective means which is going to be fulfilled by fulfilling certain conditions. That is, the efforts are minimum, the output is maximum. That is what we call it as effectiveness. So, any desire to be effective, it has to be backed by two things. What is that? Willingness to buy and ability to pay. Any desire which is backed by willingness to buy and ability to pay at a certain price is what we call it as demand. For a product to have demand, people should be willing to buy. Demand is not created on its own unless people are willing to buy. Willing to buy means they know how much they want to buy. Up to this point, they are willing to buy. Beyond that, that is what we call it as shortage. If you are unwilling, yet you are made to buy, it is not a natural state of demand. It is an induced demand, that is what we call it. A demand that is created by situations. Here, the demand is being created by the desire, backed by willingness to buy. There has to be willingness. Willingness to consume the product or service. So any product or service that has willingness on the part of the consumer is definitely going to have demand. A very simple theory of whether your product is going to have demand or not. Are the people willingly ready to buy? Willingly means what? The prices are suitable for them. No heavy advertisement. The product is up to the mark. Within the range of income. Because of these, there is willingness to buy. And ability to pay. You might be willing to buy. You might have effective desire, but still if you are not able to pay, that does not constitute demand. At a certain price, of course. I'm not going to buy a product, say at a price which I am not able to afford or at an agreeable price. That product is not going to have demand. Right? So, for a certain product, commodity, goods, service to have demand, it should fulfill two criteria: willingness to buy and ability to pay at a certain price. What does willingness to buy reflect? The quantum of the commodity, how much quantity you are going to consume at a certain price. That is what we call it as willingness to buy. And ability to pay decides the price at which you are going to consume. Willingness to buy is going to determine the quantity. Ability to pay is going to determine the price. It means to have demand for a certain product, you need to have effective desire. You should be aware of the quantity you want to buy, and you should also be aware of the price at which you are going to buy. So, this is what we call it as demand. That is, effective desire backed by willingness to buy and ability to pay constitutes demand for a product, goods or service, commodity at a certain price. At a certain price, not at a random price. When you say certain, means at an agreeable price. You don't draw a price at certain level which is not agreeable to the consumers or customers. Right? Say for example, Surf Excel sells at an agreeable price of X rupees. Right? That means customers are willing to buy and able to pay. A product should have a price which is going to satisfy these two parameters, wherein the customers are willing to buy and able to pay. Then we can say that a product has demand. Moving on, what is that next thing? Types of demand. How many types of demand are there? The first type of demand is direct demand. Direct means this particular board has a direct demand in its own, in this position only. Means is this particular demand, this particular product is having direct demand, means it is having demand for the product as it is. As it is. No changes are supposed to be made. Is for the goods as they are. Like this is as it is, and you're having demand, then you can call it as direct demand. Derived demand. Now, there are certain components that go into making of this board, and the prime component of this is this particle board. So, if you have more demand for this particular product, that is direct demand, if you are having direct demand for the board, then you are going to have derived demand for particle boards, right? That means to manufacture this, right, you will have to produce this. Since you are having greater demand for the board, you will be having greater demand for the particle board. So demand for particle board is derived demand, and demand for this white board is direct demand. Right? When do you say this is white board? When it has these aluminum edges, when it is polished from one side, when it is having these hooks on top of it, it's called as white board. Otherwise, on which you write, this is what we call it as particle board. So you are manufacturing more of this because to have a direct demand for white boards. So hence it's called as derived demand. Recurring demand is for goods which are required frequently. Food, clothes, you have recurring demand. Replacement demands. A person has, say for example, a mobile phone which is 4G. Now since the technology is coming up in the range of 5G, people are going to go for mobile phones having 5G compatibility. That means you are replacing your existing phone, and hence there is a replacement demand for 5G cellular phones. That's called as replacement demand. Complementary demand is for goods they are jointly demanded. Like again, coming back to the classic example of whiteboard. Along with whiteboard, what do you need? Marker pens, dusters, right? Whiteboard, dusters, sorry. So, demand for marker pens is because they complement each other, complementary goods, right? That's it called as complementary demand. More of this is selling, more of them of the marker pens they are going to sell. More marker pens are selling, more ink is going to sell. Complementary demand. Right? Competing demand. Complementary demand is for goods that are jointly demanded. Competing demand is for substituting products. Substitute products. Like for example, if there is demand for soft drinks, then definitely there is going to be demand for juices also, because soft drinks, if they are being consumed, and if you want to create a product, or if you have a product which competes along with that, that means the product is not the same, but it is similar in nature. What is that? They are soft drinks, right? Like soft drinks and juices. liquid drinks, not soft drinks, liquid drinks. But they are competing with each other. Both products are different, yet they compete with each other. Like tea and coffee. Both are what? Beverages. Soft drink and juices, tea and coffee, these are beverages. But both products, they are competing with each other. So this is what we call it as competing demand. Here we complete our types of demand. Determinants. What determine a demand for a product or a service? What are the determinants? How do you come to a conclusion that because of this, there is demand for the product? As you know, demand is what effective desire by willingness to buy and ability to pay, quantum of commodity and price. Here, if you see, more important is price. We generally see that if a price of a commodity is less, then the demand for that product is more. You can take any category of goods, needs, wants, or desire-based category. The moment, even of need-based, say for example, you might be buying 1 liter of milk, you need 1 liter of milk every day, you might be buying that at say 50 rupees. And immediately if the price of that 1 liter of milk, if it comes down, you'll see the demand for that particular milk goes up. You'll say, okay, since we are spending 50 rupees for 1 liter of milk, it's come down to 40 rupees, let's increase the consumption. You try to justify your increased consumptions. That means demand depends upon price. If the price goes up, demand goes up. If the price comes down, if the price goes up, demand comes down. And if the price comes down, the demand for the product goes up. The second determinant on which the demand depends is income of the consumer. For normal goods, if income increases, demand also increases. And for inferior goods, if income increases, demand comes down. That means if you are having higher incomes in case of normal goods, right, you'll buy more of that, or you'll keep on buying it. But in case of inferior goods, means which are having relatively low price value, what will you do? You will stop buying that even though your incomes are rising. Take the case of shoes, for example. If your incomes are good, then you will not buy low priced shoes. You will go for superior goods. There the demand for those kind of products goes up. Right? Unbranded clothes. You'll stop buying them even if your income rises. What will you do? If your income rises, the demand for superior goods or normal goods, it rises. Prices of related goods also influence demand. Substitutes. Say for example, if the price of Surf Excel goes up, demand for Ghadi detergent also goes up. What are these? Substitutes. Right? So any substitute product is going to have a demand in case of its own competing product. They both are competitors. But since the price of Surf Excel has gone up, demand for Ghadi detergent it goes up. Whereas on the contrary, for complementary products, it is exactly the opposite. If a price of a commodity goes up, demand for its complement, it also falls down. Right? Say for example, If the price of motorcycle it goes up sharply, demand for petrol it comes down. That's called as complementary goods, right? Taste and preferences. Demand is also determined by taste and preferences. Very significant in case of consumer goods. That you take into consideration taste in case of consumer goods, where you are consuming those goods on a large scale, on a daily basis, at regular intervals, quite frequently, right? Taste and preferences also matter. Expectations of future price changes gives rise to hoarding of durable goods. You anticipate that in the near future, the prices of goods and services might go up, and because of that, you try to have some ample amount of stock, more than that is required on a monthly basis, on a daily basis, or whatever it is, right? Since you believe that the prices may go up, you try to have demand. There is an unexplained demand for that particular product. Population. Size. So by population, we don't mean to say that, okay, this much of population or these many people. That's not population we are talking about. Population here in this context very specifically means size of the population, composition of the population, and distribution of the population. Size, the total number of population. Distribution, how is the population distributed? Male, female, young, adults, middle-aged, working, non-working, right? And composition. Do we have large number of population which is consuming? Do we have a population which is male, which is female, which is college going, which is working class, non-working class? Composition and distribution. How is the population distributed? So you have, for example, out of 100 million people, where are the people located exactly? Are they in rural areas? Are they in urban areas? In urban areas, what are they? They are educated, uneducated, having this much of income, that much of income, right? So all these things, they affect the demand. Advertisement. Now, advertisement is very significant for those products which are competitive in nature. You have to have a strong advertisement strategy to sell a product in whatever category they fall in, need, want, or desire. If these products in these categories, if they're competing, if there are a large number of competitors, then advertisement plays a significant role in case of demand for particular product or services. Now, off the record, what is advertisement? Advertisement is, if you go by the general definition or the accepted definition or the normal definition or the principled definition, is what? It's promotion of a product. I put it in a different way. What is advertisement? Advertisement is creating a mind space in the minds of consumers or customers. Advertisement, mind space of consumers or customers. So, if you have more of mind space of consumers or customers, then there's going to be demand for the product. So hence, demand is dependent on what? Price, income, prices of related goods, tastes and preferences, expectations of future price changes, population, and advertisement. Now moving on, we are coming to the next most important thing of this concept called as law of demand. Now, very simple. Other things being constant means what? Your incomes are constant, your taste and preferences, they are constant, size of population is constant, advertisement is constant, price of related goods, they are constant. If a price of a particular product goes up, demand comes down, and if price comes down, demand goes up. That is, it's having a negative relationship between price and demand. Very simple, right? Simple law of demand. Now, what are the reasons? There are two reasons for this. One is substitution effect and the other is income effect. That means when price of a commodity falls, its substitutes become more expensive, assuming the price has not changed. Right? Very tricky thing to understand. Means if the price of a commodity falls, its substitutes become more expensive, assuming that the prices have not changed. In fact, they don't change. But when you see that when price of Surf Excel, if it comes down, then Gadi detergent appears to be pricier, costlier, right? So, even though the price has not changed, but still, in that case, what will people do? Since it appears to be that this price has gone up, that is of substitute products, as compared to the original product, or the Surf Excel, people will buy more of substitute products. So hence, availability of a substitute puts pressure on the price, and if the price comes down, then the demand for that particular product, it goes up, that is Surf Excel, because the substitute appears to be pricier in comparison. So this is having what we call it as substitution effect. Since there is substitute, demand for this product is going to go up because its price has come down. Right? The other, income effect. When price of a particular commodity falls, the consumer's real income rises. Hence, the purchasing power of the individual rises. Say, for example, you might be spending around 500 rupees on milk, buying at 50 rupees per liter, and you're consuming 10 liters of milk in a month. And if the price of that milk comes down at 40 rupees, consumption for that particular product, it goes up to the extent of buying it at 50 rupees, right? We'll consume more. Say 50 rupees, 10 liters, now it's come down to 25% less. We'll see an exponential rise of 25% more consumption. That is, say maybe you might be consuming now 12.5 liters of milk. So this is what we call it as income effect that is studied under law of demand. Now there are certain exceptions to the law of demand. Law of demand is, if a price of commodity goes up, the demand for that particular product comes down. If the price of product it comes down, demand for that particular product goes up. That is inversely related. Price and demand, they are inversely related. But there are certain products which are exceptions to the law of demand. What are those products? These are called as giffen goods. Giffen, G-I-F-F-E-N, called as giffen goods. Now, what are giffen goods? If price goes up, demand for given goods goes up. That is, they are having direct price demand relationship, like I told you, inferior goods or cheaper goods. If price of given goods that display direct price demand relationship, price goes up, then also people will buy, right? Price comes down, and then also there is not going to be demand. There are these kind of goods, right? Like cheaper goods. Say for example, you might be buying inferior goods, means not which are inferior in terms of quality I am talking about. When you talk about inferior goods in case of economics, it is always meant that goods which are having relatively less prices, lower prices, not less prices, but lower prices. So demand for that particular goes up. Snob appeal. There are certain goods which are having snob appeal. Some goods they are bought only for snob, for say for example, to maintain certain social status. You're not bothered about the utility of these kind of goods. Now, what is utility? Utility simply means satisfaction, right? Like for example, latest models of mobile phones. You may not be requiring them. You may not be having any utility to buy that. You may not derive any satisfaction. You're going to derive only one satisfaction, that you want to simply you want to buy the product to maintain the social status, right? Third is, there are certain goods which show demonstration effect. Demonstration effect. What is that? Influence of a person's behavior by observing the behavior of others. Say somebody else is using, say for example here in the case of celebrities, we use certain shampoos because certain A celebrity promotes it, or they say